Hi, everybody. It's me, the Fed, host of Inside the Eye Live. Before the Sunday mainstream media political pundit talk shows, there's Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, the Fed, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lesson and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lesson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I am your host, Janet Kira Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson. And today we have a very special guest, John Lear. And John is the son of William P. Lear, the designer of the Lear Jet executive aircraft, the 8-track stereo, and founder of Lear Incorporated, now Lear-Siegler Corp, a large defense contractor. And John's dad, William P. Lear Sr., was president and chairman of the Board of Lear Incorporated, who in 1952 became the government's primary contractor for anti-gravity. To the concern of the Pentagon, John's dad was outspoken in his belief of the existence of extraterrestrial visitors. However, John did not become interested in the subject until 1985 when UFO stories captured his attention. So he's going to tell us about that. On this show, we're going to cover things like John believed in 54 that the President Eisenhower met secretly with several ETs at Muroc Flight Test Center, which was Edwards Air Force Base, become Edwards Air Force Base. And then there's another meeting 10 years later at Holloman Air Force Base with the ETs in the U.S. government. So we're going to talk about those things. He's a very popular lecturer in the UFO circuit, and John is convinced that Newton's law of universal gravitation was wrong, and that gravitational force is independent of the mass of the attractive body. So he's going to explain what that means to us, and he knows what happened to Malaysia Flight MH370. It's part of a major worldwide conspiracy. We're going to talk about the gravitational force of the sun. He believes that there are 250 million humans, not originally from the Earth, on the moon. He's going to talk about that. And there are civilizations below the Earth. And there are 40 planets in our solar system, not nearly the 9 that NASA has told us about. So we're going to talk about those things before we bring on John. Dr. Lesson, Sasha, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. We're really very much interested in those things. And also, I looked from the biography, I'm interested in the dangers of the Hadron Collider and the holographic plane that might have been involved in the Twin Towers staged event.
Excellent. And so, John Lear, are you there?
I'm here.
Welcome to our show. Well,
I'm here.
Thank you for coming to agree. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed today.
My pleasure.
Where would you like to start? What else would you like to tell our listeners about you? And we'll let you start, and then we'll chime in now and again with some questions. Okay?
Okay.
Take it away. Hello?
Okay. Now, what did you want me to do?
I want you
just rap from the hip. Just say whatever comes to mind in the logical way that it seems to come out and telling people what you do and what you found out that you think would be interesting to them.
Well, just today I read that the AirAsia airplane that crashed recently, I think a couple of weeks ago, now they're saying the co-pilot had control, and it's like they're blaming the co-pilot. Oh yeah, well the co-pilot's in control. No matter that's the problem. But if you'll remember, the same thing came up with Air France 447 in the middle of the Atlantic, and it was same conditions, thunderstorms. Everything was the same, and they lost the airplane in the same way. It went into a climb from which it went into a stall and then crashed into the ocean. And both Air France and the French FAA, if you'll remember, blamed the co-pilot for pulling back, not recovering from a stall in the proper way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't believe that.
But the flaps he did the flaps at the wrong time. Yeah,
I didn't believe that then, and now with this newspaper story today that the co-pilot was responsible for this recent crash, I'm wondering what's wrong with this. This is both Airbuses, and I'm just wondering if Airbus is trying to cover up some kind of deficiency with the airplane. I never liked the total electronic control. I was fortunate that I never had to fly total electronic control in an airplane. I always had I always flew the older type airplanes, which had direct control of the airplane.
John, there was there's a lot of rumors going around that perhaps the plane was diverted to a secret clandestine base at Diego Garcia, and that the plane disappeared without a trace. Didn't crash into the sea at all. Did you hear that stuff?
About what now?
That was the 371, Malaysia.
Yeah, the 370. And so that seems like, is that feasible? Is that within your thoughts of a possibility? What do you think was going on?
Well, MH370 was taken over by the Israelis, and it was flown to Tel Aviv. It was there for several weeks, and what they did was they installed a control system where the airplane could be totally controlled, every control by an airplane flying alongside it. And so what they did, first of all, the objective in getting 370 is there was a very, very lucrative electronic invention that was co-owned by 4 Chinese and the Carlyle Group, Carlyle Group Corporation. And what they had to do, or I'm assuming what they had to do, was get rid of those 4 Chinese so that the Carlyle Group could take over this extremely lucrative electronic invention. So what they did is they took the airplane, took it to Tel Aviv, put all these controls in, and then they fabricated MH17 leaving from Amsterdam. Never did. There never was an airplane that left Amsterdam, but they flew with 2 fighters on each side of this MH17 with all the 295 dead bodies inside, flew it up and took over the course that MH17 would have flown. When it got to the border of Ukraine, it turned 20 degrees left, and when it reached the Zionist-controlled portion of Ukraine, the 2 airplanes, jets, shot it down. The reason they wanted to shoot it down over the Zionist-controlled area is so that nobody could get in and figure out what happened, that was the original 370. We've all been told that
wow.
And this has all been proven by Jim Stone, who has a good website where he got a hold of photographs of the crash in Ukraine, which positively shows that the airplane that crashed was MH370, and it has to do with a paint job. 370 was a brand new airplane. The alleged airplane that was being flown by MH17, or is allegedly going to be MH17, was an older type and had a different window and configuration, slightly different configuration paint job. But Jim Stone got a hold of these photographs and showed them on his website exactly how they did this. Now, if you'll notice, there was only a couple of funerals held for these 295 people that supposedly crashed or the 245 people that supposedly crashed in MH17. There was no flight, and so it's all been a hoax, and it's all to do with this extremely expensive, extremely lucrative electronic equipment that the Carlyle Group wanted to take over. So that's what
does this stuff do, John? That equipment, what does it do?
The invention?
Yeah, what's it about?
We don't know what this electronic invention is, but apparently it's very, very lucrative, and nobody's found that out yet because nobody has found out this real story, so there haven't been any investigations in it. And the press has bought the MH17 story hook, line, and sinker.
So is there a tie with all of these flights? How many crashes are there? I've lost track. Are there 4 now?
How many what?
How many crashes have there been? Is there like 4 now since MH370? I've lost track. And is there any kind of correlation between all the different flights?
Yeah, 370, and then this recent, I think it was AirAsia crash, and that's been about it.
Okay, so
so let me just, if I understand this, the Malaysian flight that disappeared wound up being with dead bodies in it being planted as though the Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine had shot it down. Something. Do I have it, or am I lost?
That's the story that they want you to believe.
Okay.
That they shot it down, but they had nothing to do with it.
They had nothing to do with it. Okay, so that's the official story, and. Anyway,
Well, so wait, what's under that is it's whipping up anti-Russian sentiment. It's trying to create hostility. What could you dig a little deeper with us, John? What is all this about?
Exactly.
Are they trying to start World War III with the Russians? It reminds me of when I was a kid and Khrushchev was pounding his shoe on the podium, and it's like a modern version of that. I grew up in the Cold War. Are they trying to force World War III upon the planet, or what's your thoughts?
Well, of course, I don't know what the real objective of all this is. I just try to follow the news and pick out what I can, but there won't be any World War III.
I hope not. What makes you think that? That's a really good thing to hear.
What is that?
What makes you think that? Because that's a really good thing to hear. I like to hear more about that.
We love hearing it.
Well,
that's supposed to be a World War III.
Well, it goes to what life is all about. We are essentially androids. We were engineered and built and grown by these ETs, which have total control of the whole thing here, and it's a battle between the good ETs and the bad ETs, who are just trying to foment total chaos on the Earth. But there won't be a World War III. There might be 1 or 2 small nuclear explosions, but no great big world war. Now,
what do they get out of chaos? What good does that do them if there's chaos?
The chaos is the ETs are the bad guys, and they like chaos, and
Why?
that's
what
their
do they
thing.
get from it?
Now, the good guys are sitting in the background, and eventually they will probably take over. But the bad guys are the ones that are in charge now and are fomenting all kinds of wars, little wars, and stuff like that. And you'll notice that, every time that we turn on the TV, there's a new weapon being tried out, all kinds of war material being built. Every single war in the past 30 years has just been to use up old ammunition and old types of war machines and ask Congress for new stuff so they can build new war-making materials. It's a fact that when Gulf War I ended and before Gulf War II started, there was American ships in the Persian Gulf that fired nonstop 3,000 missiles into Iraq, and the reason was to create terrorists. Now, if there's got to be a threat for the military to survive. So when they found out there was nothing more to go after, the North Korean problem was a hoax. North Korea couldn't possibly do anything, and they ran out of enemies, so they had to make their own enemies. And what they did was they started out with 9/11, and they had these holograph airplanes look like they're crashing into the World Trade Center 1 and 2, and it was said that there was Arabs on board, and they had hijacked the airplane. First of all, most of the Arabs have been found and they're alive. Second of all, it's not possible for an Arab with or anybody with a minimum amount of flight experience to take over a 767 with the new type of navigation system in it and take it over 90 miles away from New York City, fly it back, and hit a building that was 208 feet in diameter, or 200 feet in width, and hit it dead center. It's just impossible. At the height of my career, I couldn't have done it. And they say that these Arabs ran into it. So that part is strictly a hoax. And what they did is they used holographic images have been in the military for about 30 years, but it's been perfected so that it fooled all the people in Manhattan. They saw these airplanes come over, but they were just holographic images. And when you see the CNN photos of it crashing into the building, it's just like a knife going through butter. There was no crash. If an airplane hit a building like that, the first thing that would happen was the tail would come off. Airplanes are built in sections. The cockpit section, then the passenger, and then the tail. That would have come off. Second of all, there's no possibility that 3,000 pounds or 3,000 gallons, 4,000 gallons of jet fuel could completely disintegrate the World Trade Centers 1 and 2. Actually, the way it was disintegrated is we have orbiting satellites, 24 of them, weaponized, and they use what they call molecular dissociation weapons. And what they do is they fire these things, and it completely alleviates the bond that holds atoms together, and completely turns to dust. That's why there was so much dust in Manhattan. It's because this concrete and the steel turned to dust that it was 80 microns in diameter. That was all that was left. Had it been any other mode, if it had been intentionally destroyed with explosives or aviation fuel, there would be about 12 or 14 stories of building left, and that would be all the remainder concrete and steel. But as with buildings 1 and 2 on 9/11, there was only barely one story left, and all the rest was just dust.
I have a couple questions. First of all, when the plane crashed, how did they create the fire that was up above?
How did they what?
What did they do? there was a fire up above in the higher stories that the firemen were responding to, and there was smoke coming out. How did they create that? Do you know what they did there to make that?
No, the fire would have been just a result of whatever was happening to the. Those were the preliminary explosives they put to make people believe that an airplane crashed into it.
Okay, so they probably had explosives, and then so the other explosives that went off down the line that we saw little puffs, that also was fabricated probably to create this scenario that it was imploded, but the actual thing they're covering up is the satellite system of 24 weaponized satellites. So it's like an initial story and then a cover story that we're supposed to find out, but the real story is that there's 24 weaponized satellites. Is that what I'm getting?
Yeah, we did it because, like we do, we're trying to fabricate an enemy that we can fight so we can get more weapons from Congress, and so we can form the TSA to search everybody for non-existent weapons. And it's just to create an enemy. That's all it was, and that's all it'll ever be in these wars. They never seem to end because they have to create the enemies themselves.
So these Carlyles are the ones that develop and sell the weapons. It's the same ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess to clarify what I'm asking is, it seems that they already had. I heard you on another interview that they had the things figured out for Roswell, the cover-up story. So it seems that they had the initial official story that it was the Arabs, and then they knew once people started speculating and analyzing the debris and the pictures and the photos, and they'd say it was a structured demolition, and so they had the little mini bombs go off, so people say, "Oh yeah, I heard a bomb going off." It's a imploded demolition, just like when you drop a building, destroy, take down a building for reconstruction. But I guess what I'm getting is the real story is that they have these satellites, which nobody knows about, but somehow you have that story. Anyway, next. Next.
Right. There's no possibility there could have been any airplane crashes because out of 2 airplanes, there should have been about 3 to 4 million parts, and every part in an airplane is stamped with an FAA number of where it was manufactured and its authority to be manufactured, and that has to be on every airplane. You just can't go out and buy a part from AutoZone and put it in an airplane. It has to be specifically approved by the FAA, and where it's made, that shop has to be approved. What I'm getting at is over 3,000 to 4,000 parts in all these airplanes. Not one single part was ever found that belonged to these 2 airplanes.
What do you do, John? Well, the evidence is there's a preponderance of evidence that reasonable people would say that Cheney, Rumsfeld, and Bush were complicit in mass murder. And yet every educated person that looks at the evidence comes to that conclusion. And yet, what happens? They are the government.
Absolutely. And one of the irritating things is, you remember when they started taking pictures of the Pentagon, here's Rumsfeld down there carrying a piece of stuff that there was maybe about 10 people carrying a large piece of equipment, and he's on the outside carrying his load so that he was the closest to the camera. But if this were a real attack, what in the heck would he be doing out in case there was another attack? He had no way of knowing that was going to be the old airplane. So why would he be out there carrying stuff around 10 minutes after the attack, or alleged attack, when he should have been inside? But since he knew that there was going to be no other thing, and he was in on the planning, he was out there saying, here I am, I'm helping clean up this mess and everything, and it was just pure BS.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what happened at the Pentagon? What was that? Was it a missile? Was that an inside explosion? What was going on there?
It was just a plain old C4 explosion on the face of the building. And April Gallup was a Army intelligence officer whose desk was 40 feet from that hole. And when she got to work at 9 o'clock that morning, they let her bring her 6-month-old son in his car seat. Instead of going into the nursery, they made her bring him into the her office or her desk, and where she worked at a computer. She was in intelligence, and she said that when the explosion went off, she said there was no airplane, no drone, no helicopter, no nothing. Nothing came through. There was no gas smell, no diesel smell, no Jet A fuel, no nothing, no smell of any kind. But there was some stuff coming down on the ceiling, the ceiling material. She grabbed her 6-month-old son, put him over her shoulder, and she crawled out that same hole that they had just exploded. And she went out on the grass and went to triage. And Army intelligence came over and asked her what she saw, and she told them, and they said, "No, that's not what you saw. You saw an airplane go through there." And she said, "No, I didn't. There was nothing going through there." And she's had problems ever since then, getting pay and being harassed by Army intelligence ever since then for speaking out about what actually happened there. And what they did is, it was a flyover. They had 757 fly low over just north of the Citgo station, and when it became a beam of the face of the Pentagon that they bombed, when it became a beam of it, they set off this explosion, and then the plane just flew up and probably land over at Andrews Air Force Base or some other base. But no airplane crashed there. And one of the odd things is whoever set up this scam on the Pentagon, they didn't know exactly how flight recorders work as far as recording altitude, because when they released the tape of the controls, and I think it records 156 different parts of the airplane and what they're doing. One of it is the altimeters, and they put on the altimeter that the last recorded altitude was 90 feet. Well, what they didn't understand is aircraft recorders record at 2992 inches of mercury, which is a standard measurement for measuring altitude. And the reason they do that is because since barometric pressure is changing all the time, when they have an accident, they have to know exactly what altitudes the plane were at. So when they set it at the 2992, which is a normal system, what they do is they go back like we did at Reagan National Airport, take the actual barometric pressure, which is 3021, and correct the altimeter for that discrepancy. That's what they do in all accidents. But the people who planned this scam didn't know that. So if you correct the 90 feet for the number of inches that it was off, you come out with 400 feet, which is exactly the altitude that it flew over.
Wow.
It was just a scam from the beginning. And as far as what happened down there at
Pennsylvania.
Pardon?
Pennsylvania?
Wait, I don't want to jump to that yet, John, because what's left dangling is, it looked to me from the way you said it, that they were setting this woman and her kid up to be victims. Yeah. Did I get it right? Yeah, sure. And so then down in Pennsylvania, what happened is there was supposed to be a third airplane crashing, not only in Building 1 and Building 2, the two airplanes, but the third airplane was supposed to crash into Building number 7. And what happened is, whatever happened, the holograph machine either quit working or something happened that they couldn't use it. So they had to fake another place. So they had 6 hours between 11 o'clock when it was supposed to crash
and 5 o'clock when they let the press in down at in Pennsylvania, and they had 6 hours to dig this hole, put a few spare parts in there, and then have some people put on hazmat suits, and then bring the press down there and say, here's the other airplane that crashed and went into the ground. Well, I can't tell you how ridiculous that is. A 757 is not going to go into the ground. There's going to be all kinds of pieces above ground. So that was just, and the other thing that they didn't know, the perpetrators didn't know, is there's a piece of equipment in the airplane called the ACARS unit, ACARS, and what that does is that records different parameters of what's going on in the airplane, the engine speed, the airplane speed, the altitude, the position, and all that, and that sends that back to the company and also the maker of the airplane, which in this case was Boeing. And what happened is that keeps going as long as there's power to the airplane. So what they didn't realize is when they faked that crash and flew that particular 757 that was allegedly crashing in Pennsylvania, the ACARS unit was running for another 4 hours. So wherever they flew it to, the ACARS unit was still transmitting. But the perpetrators didn't know about that particular unit in the airplane.
What happened to Building 7 then?
To what?
Building 7. Building 7. What happened to Building 7?
I'm sorry, I'm a little hard of hearing. I can't.
Okay, what happened to Building 7?
Building 7.
Yes, Building 7.
Yeah, well, that was same thing, imploded by the satellite, just like the others imploded. That's why it disintegrated in its footprint. And there's no possible way that if it was an intentional using dynamite and explosives like that, and you'll remember the guy that owns the lease on those. He said, "Well, we decided to pull it." Well, that was nonsense. If you decided to pull it, how did you get it to disintegrate into its own footprint?
Great. Wow. Okay. Anything else you want to say about 911 before we move on to something else?
No, we'll move on. If I remember anything, I'll bring it up.
Okay. Where do you want to go next? We've got all these different places to go. You want to go to the moon?
I'll talk a little about the moon, because when you talk to people about people being on the moon, they say, no, that's impossible. There's no air. And all I say is that's what NASA's told you. As a matter of fact, NASA hasn't told you one true thing in their entire existence. Nothing they've said is true. Absolutely nothing. So Perry Spalter, who wrote the book, The Gravitational Force of the Sun, in 1993, she's proven both scientifically and mathematically that Newton's universal law of gravitation is wrong. There is no relationship between gravity and the density and the size of a planet. None. So if you use the Boole-Aldous law of inverse square, you'll find out the actual gravity of the moon is 85% that of Earth. So what that means is it'll hold an atmosphere. The moon has a breathable atmosphere. They grow crops. There's about 250 million people that live up there, humans just like us, but not from Earth. They're from someplace else. And then there's also the ETs that live underground of the moon. All stellar bodies, all planets have tremendous areas inside them, caverns and caves. On Earth, there's hundreds of different civilizations under the surface of the Earth that we will never know about. But you hear stories every once in a while about Mount Shasta and the people that they've seen there, Death Valley, people that have been seen there. But there's hundreds of people living under the surface, or ETs living under the surface of the Earth. Not necessarily humans, but different kinds of ETs.
So let's back up a little bit and let's talk about the different species. You're saying there are some good and bad aliens. And we were talking a little bit about Eisenhower. Who met with Eisenhower? What are the beings that we're dealing with, and who's on the good side, who's on the bad side in your cosmology?
Those are the bad guys in what we.
Were they Greys? Were they Anunnaki? Who met with or was there 3 or 4 different species? What's the story that you are in agreement with?
They wanted to give us weapons, and Eisenhower didn't want that. So he turned them down, and I guess something else happened in 1963 where we did accept those weapons, one of which was this molecular dissociation weapon that we used on buildings 1 and 2. Now, first of all, let's talk about the universe. The universe is infinite. There was no Big Bang. The other day there was a story that the Hubble telescope could have seen the start of the Big Bang except for a flaw in a piece of dust on the telescope. That's pure nonsense. The universe is infinite. It's so big and there's no words to describe how big it is. There was no beginning and there was no end. And there's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of different types of ETs, many who have visited Earth, and one of those sets of ETs are the ones that designed, engineered, and grew humans, which we are. And, there's a book out. I wonder if I have it here. Oh, yes, I do, luckily. There's a book that came out about 3 months ago, and it tells the history of the universe, and it's pretty interesting. It's called Mars and the Lost Planet Man by Lou Baldwin. Lou is a friend of mine, and he grew up in Italy. His father was in the U.S. Army, and from the time he was a little boy, he was taken by ETs to all different parts of the universe to see what was going on. And now he's written 5 or 6 books about it and tells what it's all about. And there's some really interesting stuff. For instance, we know the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, but we don't know what caused that asteroid belt. And it was actually the planet called Man. And there was 100 billion humans living on that planet. It was much larger than Earth. But something was going wrong. The ETs who made that particular species of man didn't like the way things were going, and it's not explained exactly what they didn't like, but that they decided to blow it up. And when they did, everything was gone in less than 2 seconds. All 100 billion humans on there and the planet, and all that was left was what we see as the asteroid belt. And there was just tons and tons and millions of tons of dirt and stuff falling on both Venus, Mars, and Earth from that explosion. So
these ETs that are the creator ETs, what species are they? Greys, reptilian, Anunnaki, mantis? What species are the original ETs that created these 100 billion humans or humanoids?
Well, of course, the ETs that created us are not the original ones. There's far more older ETs. But the Greys are robots. They're advanced robots, and they work for either good or bad ETs, and they just do the busy work, like all the abductions. Everybody that lives on the planet Earth was abducted at one time or another. People think that it's 1 in 10. No, it's everybody was abducted. And what they do is they abduct you once at 2 years old, once at 4, once at 7, once at 10, and the last time at 13. And unless they need to put any more upgrades in a particular human, then that's the last time they're abducted. But everybody gets abduction, and they all have cover memories. Now, the stories that you hear about bad things happening to abductees, that's a screen memory. That's not what really happened. What really happened is
so what is happening? Let's say, why are they doing it 2, 4, 7, 10, and 13? What are these upgrades? What happens in an abduction, and why do they take everybody? What's that about?
Don't know. I don't know what.
You don't know?
No.
Okay, so you don't remember your abduction?
No. But I have a close man. But I have a close family, two close family members that have total recall and remember being on the moon, which is where they take you. They take you out of bed. They take you to the moon. They put you on a table there and spend a few minutes doing whatever they do, bring you back, and the whole thing takes about 20 minutes, including both the going to the moon and coming back. And
so you said they're putting in upgrades. What do you mean by that?
Pardon?
You said they put in upgrades.
Oh, upgrades, just like a computer.
Upgrades.
Yeah, computer upgrades. Like you put upgrades in a computer. They take mankind, and this version of mankind I'm talking about, which is us, which live on Earth. They put whatever upgrades are needed.
And then you were talking about the cover memory. So people have. I'm an experiencer, and I have conscious memories, and mine tend to be good. But you're saying the negative ones are a cover memory?
Screen memories, right?
Correct? The screen memories, yes. And why would they give people negative memories? Is there a purpose for that?
Yeah, they don't want anybody to remember what's really happening up there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this family member of mine, it's really interesting because this member was able to draw the doctor that worked on this person, and it's identical. And this person, my family member, I'd never showed him these pictures before, but he drew an identical picture of a praying mantis who was the doctor that worked on him. And I said, "Weren't you scared?" And he said, "Well, nervous, not so much scared."
Okay, so the mantises are in this part of this operation. So this is a joint venture with many species. Or how many species are in this project where they go and they upgrade humans? Do you have any idea?
Must be billions, because there's 7 billion people approximately on the face of the Earth, and if they take everybody at ages 2 through 13, there must be a lot of ETs around. And I was told that if you had a switch and if you could in the daytime turn the switch on and make every saucer in the air black, the sky would be as dark as night, because there's so many saucers in the air at any one time.
And what keeps us from seeing it? Is there some kind of cloaking device?
Yeah, they have a cloaking device on all these saucers. They don't want us to see them. We're not supposed to know any of this stuff I'm telling you.
So this is very interesting, because it's like, we have animals and we take care of all our animals. We keep track of our chickens so we're just like that. They're keeping track of us, and we manage to do that pretty well. So they're just doing the same thing, and we don't know what that's all about. Okay, so what else did your family member, your two close family members, remember that they were able to convey to you?
That was it. They just remembered he was in his treehouse. He remembered the air turning green, and then he remembered lying flat on the silver table, or highly polished silver table. And then he remembered some of the instruments, but he didn't know what they did. And then he was able to draw the doctor, and then he described the things hanging on the wall, which were embryos in large containers with fluid in them. And this is the kind of stuff we saw in the Dulce drawings that I made from the photos that the that the guard escaped with in 1979, and he made 25 black and white photos, a 7-minute video, and took 100 documented documents. And when he escaped, and he made 6 copies, and he put all this in 6 different containers, waterproof, and I gave them to 6 of his friends, one of whom was a friend of mine here in Henderson, and said, if I don't check in, he said, I'm going to check in every 4 months. If I miss 2 check-ins in a row, or 8 months, then you can go get those boxes, unseal them, and do whatever you want. Well, in 1996, he had missed 2 in a row. As a matter of fact, he missed 3, and there was a expedition, I think 3 or 4 different expeditions by the same people looking for the box that my friend had hidden, but it wasn't there anymore, so they never found it, or either it wasn't there or they forgot where they hid it. So we never take those. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about Dulce, whether it's real or not. I have a friend that works there, so yes, it's real. It always has. It's been there a long, long time. They keep adding on to it like they do all around the Nevada test site. The Nevada test site is a country within its own right now. It's separate from the United States. They have their own rules, regulations. They have their own way of doing things, and they have a real nice little kingdom for themselves there.
So what is the purpose of the moon base and all this stuff? They have the embryos against the wall. Who do they use for the breeding program? Is there a breeding program? Can you tell us a little bit more about all that?
Could you say that again, please?
Okay, you said that your family members saw the embryos against the wall, and then it says that is the same thing about the embryos at Dulce.
Oh, yeah.
And so
it's the same
what's
type
the
of thing.
connection there? And then also, the other question that came to mind is are they doing a breeding program, and who do they decide to use for the breeding program?
Yeah,
they stop at 13, but then they obviously do more than that with some people.
Right. I was just saying that the containers were the same that were seen in the Dulce drawings, or the drawings of the photos in Dulce.
Okay, and so what about what's in these containers? There's embryos. Tell us how the embryos get there, and are they humanoid?
They were just there. There's no explanation. There's no explanation given of what they're doing with the embryos.
Okay, Sasha wants to ask a question. Go ahead and ask your question.
I've been trying to talk, it never comes out.
It's not working for him. Okay. Sasha, try to speak into the phone. Can you? I don't know. Something's going on with his phone. Okay, so let's continue. We'll fix that during the break, I guess.
Okay.
Is everybody still there? Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, now, as far as our solar system, there's 40 planets in our solar system, not 9 as NASA has told us. And there's civilizations, many civilizations on each one of these planets and their moons. So there's hundreds, if not thousands, of civilizations in our particular solar system. Now, we're told that the farthest planet out is Pluto, but there's some that are much farther. There's some that are much nearer, but there's 40 of them. And some of them have no mass. Some of them have a great deal of mass. But gravity is not dependent on the density or size of an object. That's why the moon is able to have 85%, and we know that NASA knows this because the first 7 missions we sent to the moon, just unmanned missions, all crashed because they were relying on Newton's universal gravitation law, which was gravity equals m1 times m2 over r squared, which is mass times mass over distance, and that is a bogus equation. It doesn't work. It's not real. So everything that NASA has told us about all the planets is bogus. And not only that, since Einstein predicated both the general and special theories of what do they call it? His theories. Pardon?
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah, since all of his theories were based on Newton's universal law of gravitation, they are all wrong too. In other words, it can go faster than the speed of light. Everything that he said was pure BS. Now, I've been able to trace back to where the cover-up of life on the moon began, and there was a Danish mathematician who gave a talk in 1856 to the Academy of Sciences in Paris, and he said, based on his figures of the moon, and he was also a very respected astronomer, was responsible for doing a lot of good figuring, and he said, based on his theory, there should be life on the far side. And people really were going for that and thought that was really great and believed it for about 15 years until the Admiral Newcomb, who was the head of the Naval Observatory in Washington, D.C., came over in 1870 and debunked this guy and put to rest, not with any evidence at all, but just said that he was wrong, and that was the end of any discussion of life being on the moon. So the Navy has known about it for a long, long time, and I haven't heard of anybody talking about it recently.
So you were talking earlier about who is on the moon, and so you said that they were a species that they're not human. Do you have any idea who they are? And you were saying how many were there?
No, the moon was made on Jupiter 38 billion years ago, and it's been towed around the solar system for 38 billion years, and it's only been around Earth since the last ice age, which was 15,000 years ago. And it's definitely populated. They have all kinds of really interesting stuff out there. They have great farms. They have all kinds of things that they trade with the different planets. They come down occasionally and take different people from Earth and take them up for a visit, usually about 2 weeks. The one that wrote a book about it was Howard Menger, and he wrote the book From Outer Space to You in 1956. And he was up there for 2 weeks giving a tour, and he came back and became a consultant to the Pentagon beginning in 1956. But we have been on the moon. The U.S. has been on the moon since 1962, and we've been on Mars since 1967. And if you'll Google Randy Kramer, I think that's the name. He just
Randy Kramer
wrote about his 17 years on Mars. Now, the Apollo missions were all a scam. It was a fake. It never happened. And the reason they did that is they needed the money of $30 billion that we allegedly spent on the Apollo program for the the weapons, the 24 orbiting weapons that we have up there. And
wow.
That's how we financed it. But everything that all the Apollo missions, most of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo missions were all fake and not real of any sort.
So they just faked it all, but you said that the U.S. has been on the moon since 1962. So that's a different program that they're covering from the world, right?
Now, what's that again?
You said that the U.S. we have been on the moon since 1962.
Right.
But the Apollo missions were fake. Tell us about that. I'm going to, hold on.
Apollo missions were fake because we needed the money. We needed the money, so we pretended that we were going to the moon and build the U.S. for the $30 billion that was unnecessary, and then they used $30 billion for something else.
Okay, we're on a break. We'll be back in 5 minutes. So thank you so much for listening. Back for part 2.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Oscar's briefs, that's your cerebral cortex, looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows it's true.
God is feeling the gelatin right now, whether you believe it or not. Heart's beating fast. Seeing as they large brain. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, which means that it needs to move. Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is mere insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio!
Tuesdays at 12 noon Eastern on Studio A to hear Tammy Adams share her knowledge of an unknown realm on Talking with Your Angels. Join Tammy as she uncovers hidden secrets about the spiritual world of angels, ghosts, and other entities that have been with us longer than we know. Tammy is a psychic, a teacher, spiritual coach, a leader in her field, and will be sharing her information and stories with you. So join us on Tuesdays at noon on Studio A. With Tammy's guidance, you'll find out who has been watching over you from the other side, and soon you will be talking with your angels.
Radio, every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, on Studio B for Momentary Zen, with host Zen Garcia at freedomslip.com, the People Station.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I'm your host, Janet Lesson, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lesson. We got it back up and running. And just want to remind everybody before we go back to our show that Revolution Radio is listener-supported. So please do go over now to that donation button and donate what you can. $1, $5, $15, $20, whatever you can donate, $100. Is greatly appreciated, and we do thank you very much for your donations, because your donations allow us to bring you shows like this and many more. So thank you for your donation. And Dr. Lesson, do we have you back?
Yes, I was stuck on these satellites that have terrific weapons, and it looks like, from what it sounds like, John, that the U.S. has established its hegemony. It rules the skies. Do I get that right?
Yes.
What are the use of these weapons? What's the enemy that they're aimed at? Who's the enemy?
Excuse me?
Who is the enemy that they're going to use these weapons against?
Oh, we'll think of one.
Okay.
It must be apparent. It must be apparent to the Chinese and the Soviets and the Islamists, whoever, that the U.S. Clandestine military's got these weapons, and they don't stand a chance. Is that right?
Say that again.
It sounds like the United States has clearly shown that they're invincible now with these weapons.
Yeah, pretty much invincible. The Cold War was fake. We were always allied with the Russians. And the reason we invented the Cold War was because we were allied with the Russians to figure out what to do about the alien problem, which you'll remember we first heard of the crash saucers of Roswell in 1947, but there were several saucers recovered before that. So they knew what was going on. And they allied with Russia to try and figure out what to do. But as I heard a few years ago, a friend of mine, actually a friend of a friend, was guarding the door for that underground super secret Pentagon room that they've got way below the Pentagon, and heard one guy coming out and another guy coming in, and their conversation was, one said, how we doing with Earth's secret war? And the other guy said, it's hopeless. So they knew then that it was hopeless to counter the Greys or do anything with them. So as far as an enemy, I think we pretty well established that we can't fight the ETs, but we're going to use them to fight somebody else, and we'll just have to figure out who that is. And I'd like to say one thing here while we're talking about the moon missions. You'll remember Gus Grissom and White and Chaffee were the three astronauts that were killed on January 27, 1967. And they weren't killed, they were murdered by NASA. And the reason they were after Grissom. And the reason they were is because he kept saying, this thing ain't going to go to the moon in 2 years. It's not going to go to the moon in 10 years. he knew it was a fake because he was an engineer and he followed it very closely and he wouldn't shut up. So they had to kill him. And so what they did is they rigged the Apollo 1 to blow up. And Joe Shea, who was the head of the Apollo program, was the fourth guy that was supposed to be in Apollo 1 for these test missions. Everybody says, well, Apollo could only hold 3 people. Well, that's not true. There was a bay in the bottom that he could put his legs into and lay on the instrument panel and work through all the problems that they had to do in getting ready for the launch. And this was just practice. Yeah, well, it turns out on January 27th, Joe Shea had to go to New York, and they put in an astronaut from the secret astronaut corps. So what happened is when it blew up, there's 45 minutes of missing time in the release of what happened that day. And what that 45 minutes is they had to go in and get that one body out before they let the regular NASA troops in there, because they wouldn't have been able to explain who he was and what he was doing. And they would have had to explain where he came from. So the best thing to do was just get in there, get it out, not tell anybody what they were doing, and then let the other recovery people in there at that time.
Wow. So they've been, the U.S. has been on the moon since '62. Why didn't they just allow the NASA flights to go there? And, you know, they could have had it working anyway. Is that because they would discover what was going on the moon?
Well, first of all, they didn't want anybody to know we had the technology to go, and they knew that the gravitational pull of the moon was 85%. And with the rockets we had at that time, there was not enough fuel, not only to get there, but to land and then take off and come back. And remember, Armstrong and Aldrin in the interviews said that they landed with about 45 to 30 seconds of fuel. Well, that was assuming that the moon had 1/6 the gravity of Earth. If it had 10 times that much, then they would have not had enough fuel to take off and come back. They knew they couldn't make it anyway, and they weren't ready to tell the public that they had a different form of propulsion to get there. And I don't know what kind of anti-grav propulsion that was, but I knew my dad was, his company, Lear Incorporated, in 1952, was one of the prime contractors in developing anti-grav. And I'm sure by 1956 that they had it conquered, that they were able to do just about anything they wanted at that time as far as going to the moon, and they actually did go in 1962.
So did you ever talk to your dad about his beliefs in extraterrestrials and why he believed it?
No, we never got along, and we never got around to discussing that. I heard him tell a few stories about pilots seeing saucers, but nothing more than that. Had I known what I know today, I'm sure what happened is they kicked him out of the secret program, because in 1953 he flew his plane to Bogota, Colombia, on, I think, to sell some of his aeronautical equipment. But when he was interviewed by the press in Bogota, he told a few stories about saucers and the fact that we would probably be able to go through the telephone wires or something like that, transmit people. But the secret government didn't want him talking at all about it, so they let him out of the program. And when the original Eisenhower briefing was released by Bill Moore in 1986, the first time we ever heard about Majestic 12. And everybody was wondering whether that was a real entity or not. And one of the close friends of my family was General Jimmy Doolittle, the general that flew the B-25s off the aircraft carrier and bombed Tokyo. He was knee-deep in the saucer program. Although he that's not a member of MJ-12, he was about as high as you could get without actually being a member of MJ-12. So he retired in the 70s, lived in Carmel, California, and still was a close friend of my mother. My dad passed away in 1978, and she kept in contact with Jimmy Doolittle. Jimmy Doolittle originally lived in Santa Monica on 3rd Street, and we lived on 14th Street, and our families were always getting together. Anyway, in 1985 and 1986, when the Majestic 12 information came out, I knew that the only way I could find out for sure was to get what Jimmy Doolittle would say. Since I didn't know him that well, although I did know him, I asked my mom if she would call him and ask him if MJ-12 was real. Well, it took me about 6 months to get her to actually do that. And one day she called him and said that, Jimmy, John's involved in something, and I don't know whether it's good or not, but I wondered if MJ-12 was real. And he said, yes, Moy, it is, but I can't tell you anything about it. And so that, for me, was the beginning of my research. If MJ-12 was real, then all the rest of the stuff was real. And that's what started me off on researching about saucers and all the rest of the stuff.
Wow. So how do you determine what's fact or fiction? Because the UFO research field is huge, and there's all kinds of people out there claiming things, and there's information, disinformation. How do you discern what's fact and fiction or disinformation?
Well, you just have to keep track of who's saying what. And it's just a process of being able to tell who's with the government and who's lying and who's not. And pretty sure, I've been right so far. So I've been wrong on a couple things, but right on most stuff. Now, pardon?
John,
I'm
interested in your take on the New Schwabenland and after the defeat of Bernat, the Battle of the Wild Sea, and the idea of paperclip that top Nazis have taken over top defense and positions in the United States, and that the Nazis are running things, and that there's still stuff going on under Antarctica. Could you comment on that?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't say it again.
And the Nazi influence in Antarctica, the base there, and in our government from paperclip.
The Nazi story is truer than you can possibly believe. Operation Paperclip began in 1946, and that was the program under which we let between 4,000 and 6,000 Nazi engineers and technicians into the United States. And the way it was done the reason it was done was when we had the Manhattan Project going, we could develop the ignition and operation of the atomic bomb, but we could not make the plutonium. Now, Germany could make the plutonium, but they could not make the ignition and the other starts needed to set the bomb off. So when Germany found out that, or realized that they were going to lose the war, they came to the United States and said, look, we'll trade you the plutonium to bomb Japan if you'll allow 4,000 to 6,000 of the Nazi SS engineers and technicians into the United States. And we agreed. That's where we got the plutonium. So then between Allen Dulles, who was head of the CIA, John Foster Dulles, who was his brother and Secretary of State, and Eleanor Dulles, who was their sister and head of the Berlin desk, between the three of them, they're the ones that let the 4,000 to 6,000 Nazis get into the United States. They immediately took over NASA, which was NACA. It's always been run by the Nazis. Hitler didn't die until 1968, and he died in the United States. We were taking care of him. And yes, the Antarctica stuff, there's so much going on down there, but it's so far away, it's hard to get any information. But if you look at the little information that is available, there is a lot going on down there.
Wow. So you said Hitler died in the U.S. and we were taking care of him. Where'd you get that story? That's fascinating.
Yeah, 1968, and yeah, we were taking care of him.
Do you know where he died? What part of it was he? Did he have a different identity, or was he walking among us, or was he in a hidden place?
No, don't know anything about it.
Don't know. Okay. Okay. Any other questions from you, Sash, about the Nazis and Antarctica and anything else you want to ask?
The whole idea of there's these vast conflicts going on that our military is aware of, but it's beyond our power to really do anything about, and yet it somehow involves us. It's just like, this is mind blowing. I just want to hear you talk some more. Because it somehow explains things intuitively. I'm getting that you're right on. So I want to hear you talk some more. Go for it.
Okay, so let me. It's 16:15. We got about 45 minutes. I wanted to cover one thing before I go on to other stuff, and that's what we're supposed to do on Earth. Earth is a prison planet. There are billions of prison planets, and the people come here who have. We've always had. All of us have had many, many lifetimes before. Reincarnation is real. All of us have lived many lives before. We're on Earth because we screwed up on our last 1 or 2 lifetimes, and we're down here paying for it. And what we do, the way we get out of here, is we learn to live our lives with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed, and we learn to love our family each and every day, to express our love each and every day. And that's the way we're going to get out of here and get into the 4th dimension. Now, the 4th dimension is what people call heaven. If you take your idea of heaven and exponentially multiply it by 1,000, that's what it's really like. It is fantastic. That's the 4th dimension. Now, you remember when the computer guy, who was the guy that died about a year ago? Steve Jobs. When he died, a minute before he died, his whole family was around him, and he said, "Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow." And what he was seeing was the reception area. And the reception area is when you die, you go and you meet the person you believe in. If you believe in God, God meets you. If you believe in Buddha, Buddha meets you. If you believe in, if you're a Muslim and you get to meet you're met by the Great One. In my case, I believe in the Great Pumpkin, so the Great Pumpkin will be me.
I love it.
But what they do is they introduce you to all the people that you, or many of the people you met in your previous lives. And you get to say hello and remember old times. And then after about an hour of that, you're taken into a room where you're shown your lifetime in 3-dimensional video, HD TV. It's just unbelievable to people when they realize that every single thing they've ever done in their life has been recorded and stored. Now, first they show you all the wonderful and loving things you've ever done and the people you've taken care of and all the good stuff. And then they show you all the nasty stuff. And they show you stuff that you haven't got any idea how anybody could have known that. And it was your deep, dark secret forever and ever and ever. And here it is being shown to you in 3-dimensional HD TV. But anyway, after they show you this, it's decided, and we don't know who makes the decision, whether you get to stay in the 4th dimension, heaven, or whether you got to go back to the prison planet and learn more of how to live with integrity without envy, hate, or greed, and how to express your love to your family every day. So it depends on how you've lived your life, where to go. So you don't have to worry about the New World Order. You don't have to worry about atomic bombs. You don't have to worry about all the nasty stuff that's going on that I've told you about. All you have to do is worry about yourself and your family. That's all. And when you pass away, you'll go to the reception room, be met by who you believe, and then you'll have an interview. They'll show you your entire life, and the decision will be made on whether you get to stay there in the fourth dimension, which is heaven, or come back to the prison planet. Now, if you get to stay there, you'll spend a couple of lifetimes living in that dimension. It's fantastic. It's free of any strife. There's no fear. There's no any kind of hassles at all. And you do that for a couple lifetimes, and then you get to choose where you want to go, and if you want to go to higher dimensions. Now, the dimensions are infinite. You know, there's fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, all the way up infinity. And you just keep going up and up and up. So it's a good deal as long as you live with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed. So now that we've covered that, and you realize there's a good ending to this, something I found out about 3 years ago was really interesting. And I used to drive up to Reno where my folks lived, and every time I pass Hawthorne, Nevada, which is halfway between Las Vegas and Reno, there's a big blue sign there, and it said Naval Weapons Training Area. And there's a little lake there. It's about 15 miles long, 100 feet deep. Not possible that a submarine could go in there, but here's a huge Navy facility there, and I kept wondering what it was. Now, there was, every once in a while, I'd be in an airplane, either in the jump seat or flying myself, and one of the other pilots would have some information, say, yeah, there's supposed to be submarines down there. And I'd say, well, it can't be in that lake because it's not deep enough. So what I found out was the 15 western states of the United States sit on a plate, and that plate rests on the Pacific Ocean. And so the Navy found an entrance in Monterey Bay, and you can, if you've got Google Earth, you can pull up Google Earth, go to Monterey Bay, and you'll see a canyon leading from the ocean, from the Pacific Ocean, up to the shoreline. And it's deep up to the shoreline, and that's the canyon that the submarines go down in to pass under the plate, and they can navigate under the 15 western states of the United States. One of the places they go is Hawthorne, Nevada, because that's where the munitions are made for submarines. They have missiles are made there, all kinds of munitions. And instead of having to truck it north to San Francisco or south to San Diego, all they do is drive across the street and put it in an elevator. And there's these two giant elevators that go down 3,400 feet to the level of the Pacific Ocean. And then there's a giant submarine bay there where they can fit 20 to 30 submarines of all kinds, and they can load up the weapons and then go back out Monterey Bay. Now, there's other entrances. You may have heard a couple of months ago they found one off Malibu, and there's some pictures on the internet of that.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
And some friends of mine have seen submarines at the level of China Lake, which is the Navy base in Central California, or Southern California. And there's a base under Lake Tahoe. And if you'll remember, about 25 years ago, Jacques Cousteau made a dive at Lake Tahoe because it's so deep, and they wanted to know if there was actually a bottom to it. And when he came up, they said, "What did you see?" And he said, "What I saw, no human should know right now." And
oh, wow. What did you see?
So then there's other places where it comes up, places where you wouldn't believe. Somebody told me the other day there's that same kind of sign just out of Bryan Head, Utah. And they're all over the place. And the Navy does sail their submarines under the 15 western states. Now, they also...
My question is, why do they put this sign to let us know? Are they teasing us? I mean, it's like they could keep that a secret and we'd never know.
They figured out we'd never know. They figured that we'd never figure it out. But anyway,
wow.
There's another submarine area where they do classified work on the nuclear subs, and it's in St. Louis, Missouri. And what they do is they sail the submarines up from the Caribbean Sea, sail up the Mississippi. And I had a friend of mine say, you know, that explains something. He said, I live in St. Louis, and there's always dredgers dredging the Mississippi River, and I couldn't understand it because everything is low draft. All the boats there, they don't have much draft, so why should they dredge? And they're dredging so that the submarines can go up and go into St. Louis for their work.
Wow. So what about the underground railroad or high-speed transportation system? Does that exist?
There's underground highways. There's underground high speed trains. They're all over the place, and there's so many. It's hard to keep track of them. But there's at least 200,000 miles of highways under the United States, and they have these great big tunnel machines that can really tunnel very fast, and they're making tunnels everywhere. And there's trains. They have these what do they call them? The high-speed mag trains that go 200 or 300 miles an hour, and they're there too. And there's also underground cities all over the place too.
So who are these people? Are they us? Are they other civilizations? Who are the ancient aliens that left us the pyramids, and there's Bosnia pyramids? How does all that tie into this story?
Well, the pyramids were made by ETs. The Earth has had many, many different civilizations, and the civilizations usually last about 25,000 years, and then the ETs come in, and they mix it up. There's been most of the civilizations that Earth has had have been much, much more advanced than our civilization. And what they do is when they're through with it for whatever they want to do, they mix it up, they cover everything so that it doesn't look like it existed at all. The Appalachian Mountains are where there was a series of pyramids much, much bigger than the pyramids in Egypt. And they were covered up and disintegrated, and all of this stuff is hidden. The Sahara Desert covers magnificent cities, and they're all over the place. Hello? Hello?
Hello? Is anybody there?
Wait, okay. How can we get from this relatively primitive society where there's war and lots of pain and poverty and diseases to a higher level civilization? I mean, if we're stuck here in this matrix having to come back and forth until we learn the lesson, can't we at least have a better quality of a life while we are living? Is there something we can do?
Was that a question?
Yes. How can we go from this primitive, archaic, war-based society that has most of us in poverty or suffering from diseases to a higher level of civilization where at least we can live in dignity, in grace, instead of suffering so much? Any ideas?
As long as you've lived with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed, and expressed your love to your family, when you're done here, you get to stay in the fourth dimension.
Well, I guess what I'm asking, is there any way we can make life itself more pleasant, more desirable? If, we have this information like pre-energy systems and cures for diseases, how can we bring that to the forefront to make that a reality for those who are alive in this zone.
It will never happen. We might get a few things, but as long as the bad ETs are control, they want to see us living in the dark ages, and they'll never make that stuff available to us. And it's all there out in Area 51. And Area 51 isn't the only secret base. There's many other secret bases, and they have so much really interesting technology, and they could really make life a lot better. But they're only interested in themselves at this point, and so there's no chance that there's going to be a better life. All you want to do is be sure you live your own life with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed.
So what about the good ETs? Who are they, and are they assisting us?
Which
species are the good ETs?
I can't hear.
Which species are the good ETs, and are they helping us?
Oh, I don't know who they are. They're out there, and they watch what's going on, but right now, the bad ETs have control.
Okay. What is that tower on the moon, and what is the purpose of that tower on the moon?
That tower was found by Richard Hoagland, and it's in the Sinus Medai. No, not in the Sinus Medai. It's in the it's Sinus Medai, and it's about 5 miles tall, and
whoa!
It sits on a tripod, and on top of it there's a square, and the square is 1 mile on each side. It's actually a cube, perfect cube, and so that makes it 6 miles high, and it can only be seen when you take a picture from a satellite with the sun behind you. Otherwise, it's invisible from Earth. Now, I thought when I first heard about this, I was reading a story about remote viewing, and there was a remote viewer, I can't remember his name now, who was tasked by the Army to follow a soul of a man that had died in a car wreck south of San Francisco. And he did his remote viewing, got to the soul, and followed him, and it was heading towards the moon. And as it was going towards the moon, it was being wrapped in something. Now, I don't know what was being wrapped in what. It was like a blanket or something was wrapping it, and it was headed towards the moon. And the closer he got to the moon, following his soul, he kept hearing, "This is not your place. You're not allowed to come here. Stop. Go back. Do not follow. Go away. You're not allowed to be here." And so eventually it became so loud that he felt his life was threatened, and he broke off following this soul. So what I did is, since I heard that, was reading that story at the same time I heard of the tower, I thought, well, maybe it's going to the tower, because we do know that as soon as you die, you get another lifetime after you go through these places that do the sorting of where you're going. I've talked to some people who are very knowledgeable who say, no, that's not true. That's not what that tower is, but they don't know what it is. So they haven't been able to tell me what that tower is. But that's how it came to be that I thought that it was one of these towers that sorts and distributes the soul after you die. Now, the picture that I sent you earlier is the crater Aristarchus, and the importance of that is the brightest spot on the near side of the moon. And NASA has always told us that they don't know what it is, that it occasionally glows blue, but that it's a very bright sand or something. And so I had a friend of mine take a high-powered telescope and take 192 pictures of the moon and put them all together to make a fantastic photo. And these can be seen on the website. Let's see, what is the website name? I'll have to remember it in a second. But anyway, that structure is covering the crater Aristarchus, and it's 23 miles in diameter. So whatever it is, it's a magnificent structure, and that's a picture of it that I sent you. The other picture is a spaceport, and I found that by looking over photos of the far side. Now, what happened with NASA is these photos were taken between 1965 and 1967 by the Lunar Orbiter series. There was 5 camera orbiters, camera satellites that were sent around the moon. They were made by Lockheed, and they were to take pictures, allegedly, to find a place for Apollo to land. But what they were is just to find out what was there. And these pictures were published in one of the NASA photo books that was published before 1970. In 1970, of course, prior to 1970, NASA could not even forecast or believe that in the year 2000, everybody would have computers that could take these photos and enlarge them, 10, 15, 100 times and with the same quality. They just didn't forecast it would happen. But in 1970, they began to realize that, and they started airbrushing photos and airbrushing all these things out. But I got one of these books up in Portland. I was at a bookstore, and I just bought every NASA book they had, and it's been about 25 years ago. And about 10 years ago, I realized what I had, and I started enlarging these pictures in this book. And that's how I found this stuff, because they hadn't really got to airbrushing all those photos from 1965 yet. So that's where the jet port comes from. In one of the pictures, you can see the jet port. It has 3 wings to it, and the right to the right side of the jet port, you can see a saucer. NASA airbrushed it black, thinking that would make you believe there was nothing there. And then on the left side of it, you can see the control tower, and the control tower is almost identical to any control tower on Earth, but that's one of the jet ports. Then there's a photo of a bucket wheel excavator that's huge, and there's another photo that shows where it is on the crater Copernicus, and there's all kinds of buildings, and then there's a road behind these buildings, and you can see I've put marked where the giant bucket wheel excavator is, and then we made an enlargement of the bucket wheel excavator and made it a pinkish or a bluish color to outline it, to show you what's there. And then there's another one. Pardon?
I'm pulling it up on Aquarian Radio. I made a page for today's show, and you scroll down, you can see I did a little slideshow with all these photos that you sent me. So thank you. I'm following along with you. So go ahead.
Yeah.
You got the bucket excavator.
And then there's a photo of a building on top of the interior of the rim of the crater Copernicus, and you can see a building there, and it's like it has 3 stories, 3 levels, but it's got to be about 300 feet high. So I don't know what that is, but it's pretty clear that it was made intentionally.
Wow. Sash, do you have any questions for John?
Well, I've just seen the Bob Dean had pictures also very much describing that bucket machine that he got from the Russian astronauts from photographs in Japan before NASA got hold of them. So I've seen exactly what you just described.
So I wanted to go back, and I'm going to the UFO Congress, and Bob Lazar is going to be presenting there for the first time in like 25 years. He's resurfaced. Can you tell us a little bit about? And then you have a book where the co-author is William Cooper, so I assume that's yours. UFO Bulletin Board System, Secret Underground Bases, and the Dulce War. Can you tell us about that book and Bob Lazar and all those good things?
Yeah, first of all, it's interesting you should bring Bob Lazar up, because when I wrote NASA, when I first heard about these pictures being available, I wrote NASA for the picture of Copernicus that's so clear that it has all kinds of stuff on there. It has vapor coming from gigantic cylinders. It has the bucket wheel excavator. It has buildings, all kinds of stuff. Well, when I wrote for it, I expected a usual 8x10 airbrush photo, but what I got was a 15x20 negative of this photo. And this was in 1988, and in Las Vegas, there was no kind of equipment here that could even develop a positive print of a 15x20 photo. So I had to wait 5 years until the technology became available. And what it did, I took the photo over to Bob Lazar to have him scan it. And but before I did, I told him that I was getting it enlarged. And one day when I was leaving his house, he said, "You know, John, if any of this stuff of the moon is true, I'm going to have to kill myself." So when I got
and that being, what was that about?
So when I got the positive photo, I took it over to his house and showed him some of the stuff that I'm telling you about. And I said, "Now, Bob, we've been good friends, but you said that if I could prove any of this, which I have, you promised to kill yourself." And he said, "Well, how can I get out of it?" And I said, "All you have to do is write, I, Bob Lazar, in order not to kill myself, do freely admit that John Lear has found buildings on the moon." So I have that stuff.
That's great. Love it. Yeah.
So Bob and I have had a lot of fun over the years, and he's going to be at the Phoenix. I am not physically well enough to go down to Phoenix, so Jeremy Corbell is going to go down there and talk a little about the movie he's making about me. He spent about 4 years up at different weekends filming all kinds of stuff and putting a movie together about my life and about my theories and stuff like that. So it should be a pretty good talk.
Oh, wonderful. Well, they do a big movie thing at the UFO Congress, which is in Scottsdale, the middle part of next month. And they give out little awards, like Academy Awards, but they're little EBs, extraterrestrial biological entities, statues. And they have a big award ceremony. So maybe your movie will be in next year's participation in their film festival that they have. That would be great. When do you expect that to be released? The movie.
All we lack is money, so he's going to show the trailer of what he's put together now, and we're going to try and raise some money in this year, and try and get it done by this year.
Excellent. So it says here under the description that there was a nightmare hall, a genetics lab, and there's a draconian Saurian war conspiracy. Can you tell us about both of those things, the nightmare hall and this draconian Saurian war conspiracy?
Yeah, I don't know about the conspiracy, but the nightmare hall is, I think, the 5th level, and that's where they do all the experiments, putting humans with animals and together and all kinds of stuff like that. I don't know that anybody that's been there, but I do know people who work at Dulce and have worked in the upper levels.
Okay, we have about a little bit less than 15 minutes before the end of the show. What would you like to focus on? And Sasha, if we've lost you again, just come in here. We can share this phone in here.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear?
Oh, now we can hear you. Okay, what did you've been quiet. So
I just was interested in how the collider what's the danger of that collider that you mentioned? That's what got my interest.
The collider? What about the collider, honey?
What is that?
What do you ask?
Well,
say that again,
the
honey.
Hadron collider might destroy the Earth. I wanted to know more about
that. The collider, is it going to destroy the universe?
The Earth, Janet.
What is this?
Earth. I don't know. We're having trouble hearing you. So you're saying that they're. Anyway, go ahead, John. Take it away. What would you like to talk about? I can't quite understand what he's saying. And Sasha, just put that phone down in the other room and come down here. We'll share one phone. Leave that in the other room. We'll turn it off. Okay. Go ahead, John.
Well, is there a question?
He wanted to know about the Hadron Collider. And let me put him on, and he can ask himself. Okay, hold on.
There's no such thing as hadrons. That was a scam. It was something really stupid that the scientists were trying to do. The ETs themselves shut that experiment down at the CERN facility because we were getting into something we knew nothing about, and we were liable to blow up the Earth. So they shut it down. I don't know what they're doing right now, but it was really a stupid idea, and hadrons do not exist.
Wow.
Okay. So, what would you like to talk about for the last 10 minutes or so of the show?
Well, I just have a few things I'm going to go list here that I usually talk on shows, and I'll go right down them. And one of them is Fukushima. That was not a earthquake. There was no earthquake. What it was a tsunami set off by an Israeli submarine 120 miles northeast of Fukushima. And what they did was try to make it seem like it was an earthquake. And what they had done is 3 months prior, they had won a contract to handle all the security of the 52 nuclear generators in Japan. And after they got that, what they found out is Japan was secretly selling high-grade uranium to Iran, and they decided to counter it by destroying those reactors at Fukushima. So what they did is they set off this atomic bomb under the sea, which made it seem like there was an earthquake and a tsunami, but all it really was the Israeli atomic bomb. And if you look at the photos, you can see that during this tsunami that's created by the atomic bomb, there's nothing shaking there. There was no earthquake there. It was just the tsunami that was creating all the problems. And since the Israelis had the contract for the security of all the generators, they turned all the security off and just let them go haywire, and to teach Japan a lesson.
Wait, who hired the Israelis to do this? Who directed them?
Nobody hired the Israelis. They did this because they didn't want Japan selling bomb material to Iran.
Oh, just to protect themselves from the Iranians. Oh my gosh.
Right.
All right, so that explains that. So now we have all this radiation pouring out into our oceans. Was that thought about? What's going to happen there? Is that destroying
it's really
our oceans, like they're saying?
It's really a tremendous problem. But anyway, one of the things I wanted to tell you is the sun does not create the heat on the planet Earth or any other of the planets. What it does is it radiates an electromagnetic wave that is modified by the planet's interior, or by the planet's atmosphere, to make the temperature reasonable. So all the stuff you hear about Mercury being hot enough to melt lead, that's baloney. It's its normal temperature on Mercury. You hear about Pluto being cold enough to freeze an Eskimo, that's baloney. It's just a regular temperature on Pluto, just like all the other planets. There's no huge gas planets. The only huge gas entity in our solar system is NASA, NASA.
Well, that makes sense with the Planet X Nibiru Anunnaki story, that they have a planet that has 3,600-year elliptical orbit, so that means they're not dependent on a sun for heat, like the false story that we've been fed all along. What do you think about Planet X Nibiru? Oh, you're talking about there's 40 planets. Tell us about your 40 planets in our solar system rather than 9.
Yeah, the 40 planets. I don't know why NASA hasn't told us. They just like their own little information source. That's about all I know about it. Let's see. Osama bin Laden died in a hospital in 2001. All this baloney about him being captured in Pakistan by the SEALs in a helicopter and then dumped overboard from a carrier is all baloney. He died in Kuwait in a hospital, and I forget what the thing was wrong with him, but it was not what you were being told.
What?
TWA 800, I don't know how many times we've been over this, but they say that the explosion of the Boeing 747 off Long Island was due to the center fuel tank being ignited by a faulty wiring in the fuel pump. It's total BS. It cannot happen. It did not happen. I've flown airplanes for 40 years. That's not how they design pumps. There is no open wiring. What happened was it was accidentally shot down by a U.S. submarine. And what they were doing off the coast of Long Island was they were tracking a drone, and they had a missile that was unarmed. It didn't have any explosives in it. And when they were tracking it, for some reason, they lost contact with it for about 3 or 4 milliseconds. And when it reacquired contact, it was not with the drone, it was TWA Flight 800, which was flying this route. And the missile didn't explode, but it did go through the first class section, after the first class section of the 747, and completely destroyed it. And they had Navy SEAL teams out there within 30 minutes collecting all the parts that could possibly incriminate the Navy on that.
Wow. What about Lockerbie?
Lockerbie, I don't know too much about. I'm sure that was baloney. They've been blaming Gaddafi on that for years. And I don't know too much about Lockerbie.
Okay.
Now,
what else would you like to clear up for us?
There's 3 accidents that I want to cover. One was United Airlines 585 in Colorado Springs, and the other was US Air 427 in Pittsburgh. Actually, 2 of those accidents, and they were both blamed on a faulty yaw damper. Now, a yaw damper is what damps the swaying of an airplane in flight, and it can be easily overpowered with 80 pounds of leg foot pressure by the pilot. What happened was, in both those cases, the pilot committed suicide. In the United Airlines flight in Colorado Springs, the co-pilot was this pilot's former girlfriend, and she had caught him a couple of nights before with another woman, and she had dropped him. So they argued all the way down from Denver to Colorado Springs, which is about a 20-minute flight. And when he got on final, he said, well, if I can't have you, nobody is. And he rolled it into a split S. And she was so strong that she actually turned that wheel on her side over 100 degrees against what he was doing to try and right the airplane, but she was unable to do it, and they killed all those people. What happened in Pittsburgh was a Boeing 727 flown by U.S. Air. The pilot, for some reason, decided to commit suicide, and he did the same thing on short final. He rolled it upside down and started pulling it through, and the co-pilot had no idea what was going on. He thought the pilot was really trying to recover the airplane, which was not true. The pilot was creating the problem himself. Same thing happened to Silk Air in Indonesia, but their people readily admitted that it was suicide.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left.
Say something uplifting, please.
That's about all I need to tell you, that relax and enjoy it. Just live your life with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed, and to express your love to your family each and every day.
Well, kind of Ram Dass, be here now, be kind to those in your lives. But it just seems like there's got to be some way to improve while we're here. I mean, then your whole life is about dying, and so I don't know. I just kind of think that there's something we could do to make this time in this life better for more people, so we don't have so many people starving. So that's my goal. That's what I'm here about. Okay, you've got another minute. Do you have a website, or are you going to be having lectures this year? What's going on?
The website
right
is livingmoon.com. We haven't done much with it lately. It's called thelivingmoon.com, no spaces. And the other is Pegasus Consultorium. And those are the ones that we work with. I have a friend, Ron Schmidt, who used to do a lot of work, but he's been taken ill for the last year and hasn't done much on it. But those are the only ones I have.
Well, that's good. And are you on Facebook or anything like that? Or are you computer savvy?
I'm on Facebook. I even check in every once in a while.
Okay, great. Because I'm sure after this show, you're going to have a lot of people wanting to know more. Oh, so people are wanting to ask about the Lemurians, but I don't know if you don't know. So we'll just end with that. So thanks so much, John, for coming on our show tonight. Appreciate it.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Love and blessings, everybody. Aloha.